And look at this, a growing number of Republican lawmakers demanding the resignation of this long list of officials in the Biden administration, including President Biden himself. Republican Congressman Mark Green of Tennessee is among those who are calling for immediate accountability, and you yourself are a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan. Congressman Green, great to see you today. First of all, that list of officials, including President Biden, why? Why call for resignations? What difference will it make?
Well, thanks for having me on, Harris. We have seen nothing but failure from this administration, whether it's the border. You just had a great segment with Jason. I mean, the inflation, our economy, the crime in this country, the defund the police movements that have resulted in a lot more dead Americans. And this failure in Afghanistan, it just paints a picture of people who are out of touch with what's really going on the ground in Afghanistan and really across the nation. So absolutely, I think Mayorkas really should be gone. And the president has shown poor decision-making and some dishonesty. I mean, his speech the other day was quite, you know, I mean, he was just wrong. He said things that were factually incorrect. So it's time for new leadership.
Are you surprised Democrats, some of them, are climbing on board?
I'm really surprised with the New York Times. I mean, some of those, you know, congressmen I've known have whispered under their breaths to us for months that there are problems at the White House with the administration, but now they're being bold. I appreciate that. But organizations like the New York Times are piling on to some of these bad decisions. So that's probably more surprising to me.
And probably a lot more illuminating for the American people, because their silence has looked like complicity at times. And so now, perhaps with all of us pounding on the door, we can get more truth. Members of Congress are telling us that Americans and Afghans are turning to Congress for help getting out of Afghanistan and away from the Taliban. One American that we heard from earlier on Fox and Friends, we're continuing to play his words because he gives us part of the story we don't get otherwise. Here's more of him.
When I got there, there's thousands of people on the street and crazily walking around, and there's not easy at all to get on the gate, which is on the east side of the airport. That's not a normal gate. They just open it for us to get in, but there's a lot of people. It's really tough. It's really hard to get in.
Look, what we learned from that is a furthering of what the State Department is saying. 2 Americans, now 11,000 of them outside the perimeter of the airport in Kabul that our military is controlling at this point as best it can, try to get to the airport. I mean, how troubling is it that that's their only advice at this point?
Yeah, it's pretty despicable. And even Kirby said in his press conference from the Department of Defense that they can't guarantee the safety of Americans who aren't at the airfield. So that the way they did this withdrawal, shutting down all the other military airfields like Bagram, and just in the dead of night going away without even telling our Afghan allies, has been the problem. Bagram's a better airfield. We should have had multiple locations that people could go to. It would require the Taliban to spread their forces out. Now they can concentrate and create basically a blockade around that city. The people who helped us, I mean, I'm getting calls from former interpreters and people like medics who worked with us that are stranded. The Taliban are searching for them, going door to door. They posted letters saying, "We will burn you alive when we find you." And this is what the Taliban is saying. And I believe them. I mean, you know, they're a sadistic ideology. So this is a failure of epic proportions, both tactically and strategically.
To hear you, and we know that you serve, but most specifically for this conversation, you know what the ground looks like in Afghanistan. And you're saying, look, not only should we have done it differently, it wouldn't have been that hard to do it differently. Just create multiple zones where the Taliban would have to focus on to get our people out. I mean, that is so basic, it's hard to believe that it didn't get done.
It's intuitive, Harris. I mean, this is, and the president was actually advised by military leaders. I have friends in the Pentagon, my classmates from West Point, who are telling me that we told him this was going to happen, and he insisted on closing the other air bases.
I want to get to this quickly. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki appeared to deflect when pressed on the GITMO 5 release. and the reporting that one of those men is the mastermind behind the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. A quick watch and reaction from the congressman.
I would also note that in prior negotiations and commitments made during the Trump administration, there were thousands of individuals who were released. So our focus right now is on, again, not taking the Taliban's word for it. We are assessing, we are closely watching, and we are being very clear about the capacities and the capabilities we have at hand should they be needed. Of course, that's not our objective.
It's like that old song, "It Wasn't Us."
You know, Harris, there's been this tendency since Carter amongst the Democrats when it comes to foreign policy to just be easy with the tigers. They have a utopian vision of the world. They can't see an enemy. So they pull out of Iraq in 2011 and we get ISIS. They make a deal with Iran, which is a horrible deal. Nord Stream 2. I mean, the list goes on. And the GITMO release is tragic. They were warned not to do this by our intel people. We told them that these are horrific people who will fight against us, and that's exactly what's happened. Wow. And it's the same leadership that last time Biden was vice president then, same leadership, same failure today.
That's an interesting point as well. Your friends at West Point giving you some of the detail of what this president would have heard and turned away from is incredibly important to hear. So glad you're in focus today. Congressman Mark Green, thank you so much.
Thank you, Harris.